I'd spent many hours getting everything in order before my 2-week vacation. I leaned back in my chair and turned to admire the scenery through the window behind my desk when I heard the unmistakable sweet voice of my assistant. So, Luke, are you ready for the big day? As ready as I am at all, Melanie. It's not like I haven't done this before. Make it work for you, boss? You don't need to set a record for the most marriages in a decade. I smiled. Are you picking on me? Maybe a little bit, but you're too nice a guy to have to deal with all the shit you've been through. Call it what it is, Mel. It was a whole bunch of shit. Are you ready to take off? Is there anything I need to tell you about? No, I think we've already covered everything. Thanks for offering to let me leave after Wednesday for Saturday's wedding. Tonight, I can just go to the pub and relax before I dive into the details on Thursday and Friday. I'm glad we're having a small wedding. So you'll let HR know if your assistant gives you a big hug? Never before. Melanie has become one of my closest friends and has been special to me since the day I hired her shortly after I took a position at Personal Wealth Financial almost 10 years ago. I will never forget interviewing her. Her resume made her the top contender, but when she walked into my office, I saw a somewhat homely, skinny girl who seemed shy and reserved. I didn't immediately notice the redness around her nose and slightly darkened eyes. The poor girl was sick as a dog, but still struggled to get through the interview. I was impressed enough to invite her for a second interview. It was then that I met a real dynamo with an overflowing personality. Admittedly, she was not attractive in appearance. She was skinny as a rail and seemed to lack the butt to hold up her pants. Nevertheless, I learned that she was full of self-confidence and personality and radiated a beauty that could have been taught by the most beautiful girls I knew. Her husband was a lucky man. Next chapter. I decided to relax for a few hours at my favorite pub near my home in Kirkland, Washington, and grab a light dinner. Kaylee, the bartender, has filled many roles for me over the years. Her beautiful red hair framed the stern face of the woman who was my second mom, confidant, counselor, and caring friend. As a young woman, I'm sure she was quite attractive, but a hard life and smoking took its toll on her features in her late 40s. But to me, she was a lovely person. She saw me at my worst and always found the right words when I needed them. The pub was sparsely populated. There was the familiar smell of fried food and the atmosphere of soothing raw emotion. As I approached the bar, Kaylee looked in my direction and smiled. Mr. Three Wolves in the Wind, how's my favorite customer doing? Better than I deserve, Kaylee. Are you still chained to that man of yours, or are you ready to run away with me? What, and ruin the wedding day this Saturday for your beautiful bride? The usual, Luke? Yes. As Kaylee disappeared behind the faucet, I noticed an attractive woman sitting alone 3 stools away from me. I estimated she was about 35. She was nibbling on her lower lip and smirking slightly, which seemed to be a result of my chatter with Kaylee. I decided to be neighborly and greet her. Hi. She furrowed her brow and gave me a suspicious look. You don't look drunk. I raised an eyebrow. That's the most interesting greeting I've ever been thrown. No, I'm not drunk. The bartender said you were wasted. I assumed that meant she thought you were drunk. Oh, I grinned. That's her nickname for me, but it's not 3 sheets. It's 3 cheaters. Great. Another guy who can't keep it in his pants. She seemed to bite her lip a little harder, and the frown on her face said it was personal to her. Just as I was about to speak, Kaylee put my beer in front of me and came to my rescue. Lady, Luke is one of the sweetest and most loyal men I've ever met. He wasn't a cheater. Sadness darkened her face and her lips quivered. I'm sorry. I was sure tears were about to come, so I nervously held out my hand for a greeting, hoping to avoid the emotional flood that seemed inevitable. No problem. I'm Luke. She reached out to me in a quick, frantic handshake, as if she was afraid of human contact. No, I'm sorry. I guess you can call me Deceived Too Many Times to Count, or Linda for short. Nice to meet you, Linda for short. Excuse me? Sore subject? Her mood brightened considerably after my stupid joke. I hate making women cry, and the change in her mood was a welcome development. Yes, definitely a sore subject, but something tells me there's quite a story behind your three chowder experience. I guess, but I'm not sure you want to hear about it. Go ahead, Luke. Tell her your story, Kaylee interjected. It's fascinating. Linda faked a pout. Please? You two aren't leaving me any choice, are you? No, they replied in unison. All right, all right. Let's see. Where do I start? Harper. Life doesn't always work out the way we expect it to. I realized my marriage was over long before my first anniversary. Funny enough, I wasn't that upset about the end of my marriage, but my confidence was shaken. I first met Harper my senior year of high school. I was an 18-year-old virgin, and she was 18 too, and far from pure. I wasn't looking for her, but a group of friends brought us together. I should have said no, but my little head beat my big head for that decision. My teammates cornered me in the locker room after the game. Luke, when are you going to stop hanging around with the blimp and find yourself a girl worthy of our quarterback? Chuck, you talk about Aubrey like that again, and I'll flog you. She's not a blimp, just a little uptight. But I like her, and even though we're not dating, she's my best friend. Okay, but you need a real girl who puts herself out there. We need to make your cherry burst. I don't need your help getting laid. Back off. Ted stepped in to calm me down. Hey, Luke, I'm sorry. It's just that Harper was telling my girlfriend that she'd really like to meet you. Harper may be beautiful, but she likes to date everyone who wears pants. That's not what I want. She's not really like that. She's nice and she likes you. Come to my party tomorrow night. She'll be there. Just to see if there's any chemistry between us. What could be worse? Guys were very cruel when it came to my friend Aubrey. She wasn't a sleek and skinny model, but she was exactly what I liked. She had a girly face that I knew would remain gorgeous even in middle age and beyond. We weren't dating, but that was impossible to realize because we were always together. Truth be told, I found her extraordinarily beautiful on the outside as well as the inside. We grew up in church together, and I wanted to be true to my beliefs. Unfortunately, those damn hormones were destroying the weak defenses I had erected around my chastity. Face it, I wanted to have fun. At Ted's party, Harper was looking for me like a missile homing in on a target. Luke, Ted said you'd be here. Hi, Harper. You look good. Good enough to eat? Well, I'm not. Relax, Luke. I'm just messing with you. She wasn't messing with me. For an hour, we played tonsil hockey, and before half the night was even over, my experience had changed on many levels. Aubrey understood right away. She looked hurt, but accepted that I had gone over to the dark side. A few weeks later, she started dating Dennis, a center from our team. Knowing that Aubrey wouldn't rush things, I teased them both. She couldn't laugh, and Dennis told me to chill. I apologized to both of them and felt pretty awkward afterwards. The way they called me out made me ashamed of my changed attitude, but after all, I was a stupid teenager. I began to distance myself from Aubrey and Dennis. In hindsight, I was living in the dark, and the light surrounding them was uncomfortable for me. I wanted to have fun, and being around them hindered me. Harper and I dated and explored each other for the rest of the school year and the following summer. I loved our relationship. She was beautiful and knew how to utilize her well-developed talents. She was easy to talk to, and we found that we shared many of the same interests and views. After a few months, I began to fall in love with her. In the fall, Harper planned to attend Washington State University, while I headed to Indiana to attend Purdue on a football scholarship. As much as I loved her, I realized the long distance would be hard on both of us. We agreed not to be exclusive and to see each other when we were both home. Hormones and partying instincts ruled my life for the first 2 years of college. True to our word, Harper and I dated when we were home. We never discussed what was going on when we were apart, and I guess that was wise of us. I found myself comparing every girl I dated to Harper, and none of them lived up to her. I missed her more and more and couldn't wait to see her again. I started calling her more often, and felt that she was experiencing the same feelings I was. My love for her grew even though we were separated by thousands of miles. Around junior high school, maturity and responsibility came to me. The values I had been taught as a child swamped my consciousness, and I grew tired of the emptiness that seemed to be a part of my cluttered lifestyle. From that point on, I only had a relationship with Harper, and I began to think about proposing to her. The summer before my senior year of high school, I needed to know what Harper thought about our relationship. Babe, is there anything we can talk about? Sure, Luke. Are you okay? You seem really serious. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I guess for the first 2 years of college I was, well, a little wild with girls. I always loved you, and I knew we'd get back together, but was it the same with guys? I I've had a few hookups for fun, but I always wanted it to be with you. I mean, no one else could compare to you, you know? Yeah, I know. I get that you date guys, and that's okay. That's what we agreed on. But this year was different for me. I started to feel like I was cheating, and I realized that I want to be the same person with you. I want you to know that since we were together last summer, I haven't kissed a single girl. I'm hoping maybe you'll promise me that you feel the same way. I only love you, Luke. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And you, I mean, will you marry me? Harper jumped into my lap, crying out, Yes, 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 yes! Then we lay next to each other and began to share our dreams of a life together. Suddenly, she stood up with a concerned look on her face. You don't want to get married now before your senior year, do you? No. Maybe a few months after we graduate. Harper seemed relieved. I assumed she was thinking about what would be practical, but it still bothered me a little. I also realized that I never got an answer to the question about her recent fidelity, but she had waved her magic wand, making me believe that she was faithful only to me. It was a minor thorn in my side at the time, but it came back to haunt me. After graduation, Harper took a job with a real estate firm, and I started my career with personal wealth financial planning. We were married in December of that year, and I considered myself lucky. I was determined to return to the faith I had as a child, but it became apparent that Harper was not interested in spiritual matters. I began to realize that living with a man gives you a much greater understanding of what he is really like. I didn't have to wait long after the wedding to see the first warning sign. Harper talked me into cutting short our honeymoon in California wine country so we could attend a New Year's Eve party with more of her friends, most of whom she knew from college. I hardly saw my new bride all night. The party was held in a dance hall that we had all rented with our own money. Harper fluttered around the room and chatted with everyone. Sometimes I didn't even know where she was. Several of her girlfriends kept me on my toes like it was their assignment for the night. I had to carry a passed-out Harper to the car and into our apartment. She was very considerate and apologized for her behavior at the party, so I got over it. But over the next year, events piled up in my mind that there was no way I could come to terms with. She had a lot of late-night meetings. She wasn't very forthcoming about the details of her work and life, and at times it seemed to me that her friends were at the top of her priority list. How could I have been married for less than a year and yet feel so alone? A year passed, and it was time for another New Year's Eve party at the same place. I really didn't want to go there, but I also felt compelled to see what Harper did when she was alone with her friends. I figured I'd have a better chance of seeing the real Harper if she didn't think I was there, so I excused myself at the last minute, citing an upset stomach. Harper even seemed glad I stayed home. I let the party go on for a few hours and then showed up around 10. I tried to stay out of sight as soon as I showed up. It didn't take me long to see Harper at the other end of the room. There was a group of 6 guys standing around her, and they were all taking turns showering her with kisses. Then I saw her pull one of them by the hand into the hallway that led to the small practice rooms for dance classes. The rest of them were standing off to the side, giving each other high fives and looking like they were standing in line. I stood there for a bit, wondering what to do, and decided I had to see what would happen. I headed across the room but didn't escape the attention of Harper's friend Amy. Luke, Harper said you were homesick. Don't bother me, Amy. Luke, please don't go back there. I grabbed her hands and looked her straight in the eyes. Why? What will I see? Amy started shaking with fear. She could see the anger building up in me, and I barely managed to hide it. Luke, you're not going to like this. Please don't. She really loves you. I pushed her away and followed my wife. There in the training room, my wife was making out and starting to undress with the guy she had willingly brought into the room. I felt like rushing in and pouncing on her and Chuck Norris. But unbeknownst to me, I took a few pictures on my phone and went home. Once in the apartment, I printed out one of the pictures and left it on the table along with my wedding ring. I packed enough clothes for a week and headed to the Holiday Inn. It was weird. I sat in the room and felt like I should have cried or been angry. But instead, I felt like I finally had answers to all the questions that had been building up in my head. I kept her in the dark for a few days while I looked for a small furnished apartment, and then I called and arranged to come over so we could talk. Luke, where the hell are you? How could you just leave like that? I'll come over tonight so we can talk. Luke, please. I'm sorry for what you saw. It was... Shut up, Harper. We'll talk tonight. I'll be there at 7. I hung up the phone and searched for some emotion to hold on to. Emptiness, of course, came over me. A little anger and a healthy dose of bruised ego also came over, but I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Sure, I'd spent a little over a year on it. Somehow discovering the real Harper justified my growing suspicions. Our relationship had never really been right. My thoughts returned to a conversation that had taken place between my father and me years ago. We were talking about love and relationships, and I asked him how I could recognize that I had found the right woman. His words ring in my ears now. It's different for everyone, but when you kiss her, maybe your knees will go weak, or maybe you'll feel a glow, like you've been filled with electricity. Maybe it will manifest in some other way. Whatever. You'll know. I couldn't remember feeling a similar affirmation with Haley, but I realized now that it was a purely physical feeling. I'd never felt the real connection my dad was talking about. So, to my surprise, I was. Okay. I was still disappointed by her behavior, but I was coping just fine. I entered the apartment at 7 without knocking. Harper was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the damn picture and my ring. Calm and clearly resigned to the inevitable, she greeted me with words that summed it all up. We're done, aren't we? I sat down across from her. Yes. Aren't you going to yell or rant or anything? Why, should I? You should. I guess I finally got to see the real you, Harper. And the truth is, we're not right for each other. Even more telling, at least to me, is that I don't think I've ever really loved you the way married people should love each other. I don't think you love me the same way either. Let's break up, keep it civil, and move on. Okay? I was surprised she didn't show more emotion. She just shrugged, which clearly said what she was thinking, even more convincingly than her next words. I guess I wasn't ready for marriage. I wanted to be ready. You're the kind of guy I want to settle down with, and I wanted to be the girlfriend and wife you wanted. I really did. You're right. It's just not me. Tonight at the bar. Linda seemed to be deep in thought when I finished the Harper part of my story. Wow. I guess you dodged a bullet when you realized the truth so early in your marriage. I didn't realize my marriage was a lie until my 14th year of life. Don't get me wrong, because you really are a beautiful woman, but I can see the pain on your face when you talk about it. I think no matter how much time passes, finding out the truth can hurt like hell, but at least you'll be able to move forward, maybe a little wiser. Leaning my elbow on the bar, I leaned my head on my arm and looked into her eyes. Something tells me I need to hear your story too. I'm getting better, but yeah, I'll share my story someday. But we only fooled you once, and I need to hear the whole thing. If I have to. It ends better than it started, so maybe this will cheer you up. Linda averted her gaze for a moment and sank into thought. Are you still seeing Harper? Sometimes. She was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis shortly after our divorce. It made her grow up fast. She's keeping well and ended up marrying a nice guy. They seem to fit together. You're not the kind of guy who likes karma biting his ex ass, are you? No, and certainly not like that. Getting sick or something like multiple sclerosis isn't something I'd wish on anyone. And I still have good feelings for Harper. We really ended on good terms. So who's number two? I had to chuckle. Number two. An apt description of how things went with Zoe. Zoe. I met Zoe at a party thrown for my old friends, Aubrey and Dennis. They were married while still in college, and after graduation, Dennis took a job at a large manufacturing firm. At a very young age, he was promoted to vice president of finance and had to move to Dallas. All of their friends gathered in the ballroom of the Hyatt Hotel to congratulate them on their move. I was talking to one of my friends when the ballroom seemed to light up, and Zoe walked in with glamour and grace. In a word, she was stunning. I found out later that her picture was on the cover of Maxim about a year ago. All the men, including myself, had to wipe the drool from their lips. Most of the men were married, and their wives were with them. Then, the funniest thing happened. The wisest general in the army could not have organized a faster or more effective defense than the maneuver that the wives instantly initiated. Almost every man was physically engaged in a serious conversation with his spouse. I was one of the 3 remaining single men, and Zoe quickly cast her hungry gaze in my direction. I watched her walk purposefully in my direction, and immediately feared the excitement in my loins was about to become evident. Hi, I'm Zoe. Is it just me? Or did about 20 women just demonstrate their claim on men? I don't think it was your imagination. My name is Luke, by the way. She shook my hand, and her touch sent shivers running down my spine. Zoe. Nice to meet you, Luke. I guess the ladies think I'm a threat. Looks like your ball chain isn't protecting you. No, my chain broke a few months ago, and yes, you are a threat. You should know how awesome you are. Thanks, but you're pretty damn gorgeous yourself. I could feel my cheeks flaming with an intense fit of blush as I searched for an appropriate response. So, shall we spend some time admiring each other's beauty? Oh shit, her laugh was amazing. I like you, Luke. You're funny. So maybe we should just hang out and get to know each other better. And so we chatted. It was bright and engaging. We chatted with great ease, and I was drawn in. She seemed to like me too. The party was winding down, and Zoe and I made a date for the next night. She had to leave a little early, which gave me time to pay attention to Aubrey and Dennis. Aubrey was still the same beautiful girl I knew in high school. She still wasn't thin, but to me she was still perfect. When I approached, she greeted me with a slight frown. Hey, Casanova, did Zoe get a hold of you? We kind of hit it off. Why? Be careful. You know Dennis and I care about you a lot, and we don't want you to get hurt again. She seems harmless, and I really like her. Luke, I love you, my friend. Open your eyes. You're repeating a pattern. I was a little upset at Aubrey's punishment. How could she assume I didn't know what I was doing? I'll be fine. I mean, we just met. I'm not walking down the aisle yet. Good. She's smart and successful, so she has a good chance. Just promise to keep your eyes open. Please guard your heart. It's a good heart, and you're a great guy. You need to find a woman who is worthy of you. I wanted to say that, but I couldn't. I wanted to say, I found that woman, but I let you go. Zoe and I wasted no time. We seemed to be in sync on every major life issue. We soon began an intimate relationship, and 6 months after we met, we were married. I made it clear that fidelity was at the top of my priority list, and she let me know she felt the same way. She seemed to share the same commitment to faith that I did, so I figured we had what it took to last a lifetime. She owned a small modeling agency and took special care to ensure a work-life balance. We married without too much pomp and circumstance and began our life together with hope for the future. Our home life was warm and rewarding. After 3 years of married life, we began to discuss having children. She seemed excited about this prospect, but I noticed that she never took the steps necessary to become pregnant, such as not taking the pill, although she agreed to do so. Regardless, I was walking on air and feeling confident that I had struck gold with the arrival of Zoe in my life. It seems just when you think all is well in the world and your life is on the right track, life decides to throw you for a loop. It was a dark and rainy Monday when I faced one of the worst days of my life. Aubrey called my office early in the morning. She rarely called me at work, and I could tell from her voice that something was wrong. Aubrey, what's going on? I don't want you to worry, but I wanted you to know. Dennis has Dennis has leukemia. Oh my God, did you just find out? Just got back from the doctor's office. He said there's a lot that can be done now. I hope he's right. Are you okay? She sighed, and I heard her pull herself together. Yes, the doctor seemed optimistic. It's an unexpected shock, of course. He's been a bit tired lately, but we didn't think he'd be this tired. But you know Dennis. He pretends to be chipper, but I can see right through his game. Keep us in your thoughts, okay? She tried to sound reassuring, but I knew my friend too well. She was hiding intense fear and a severe wave of depression. I wanted to be next to her and hug both of my friends, but it didn't happen. We usually talked on the phone about once a month, and from now on I decided to increase the phone calls to at least weekly. She was thousands of miles away from me, but my friend needed me. Our conversation broke down and depression swept over me. I felt like I was drowning in an ocean of anxiety as I looked out my office window at the bleak, rainy landscape. I was dealing with this news when another good friend, my personal assistant Melanie, quietly walked into my office and closed the door. Her face flushed. Her eyes were red as if she'd been crying. And from the look on her face, I assumed she'd heard about Dennis and Aubrey. I was wrong. Luke, you know I love you and would never wish you harm, right? Mel, you're scaring me. What's the matter? I've been worried about this all weekend, but you should know. On Saturday, my husband and I had dinner and went dancing to celebrate our anniversary. We went to a jazz club downtown, and she started to cry. My mind was racing, trying to guess what she was going to tell me. And then it hit me. Zoe was supposed to be at a meeting with her partners in Portland on Saturday, and she was staying the night. What, Mel? Your wife was there with some guy and well, I took some pictures. Oh God, I'm so sorry, Luke. The pictures were pretty clear. The caresses under the table, the warm-up on the dance floor, and the kisses were clearly captured. My tears flowed like Snoqualmie Falls. First, Dennis and Aubrey's horrible news tore at my emotions, and now Zoe had betrayed me. Melanie smothered me with hugs and apologies. I managed to calm down and thanked her for the story and apologized for Zoe ruining their weekend. Mel forwarded the pictures to me, and I printed out the most graphic ones to use that evening. I recognized the guy as one of the models Zoe ran. On the way home, I stopped by the pub to build up my courage for the confrontation. Kaylee did a great job of helping me calm down. A couple of my friends from my football days were also there. I didn't know it at the time, but two of them had devised a plan to teach Zoe's lover a lesson. I found out later that they tracked him down and almost destroyed him. I wished they hadn't done it, and at the same time, I felt guilty for secretly being excited about it. The wait for Zoe to come home seemed like an eternity. My stomach was rumbling. My mind constantly switched between anger, hatred, regret, thoughts of forgiveness, and pain. When she finally walked in, I was sitting at the dining room table with my exhibits ready. She walked into the room cheerful and sweet. Hi, baby. She came up to me to kiss me, but I pushed her away. Sit down, now. She sat down so fast she almost hit the chair. Luke, why are you talking to me like that? I don't know. I put one by one the pictures on the table. Maybe I should be talking to you some other way? She looked at the first one and immediately turned white. Her tears were flowing freely, and even a day earlier would have melted me. Now, however, they were just pissing me off. So what part of faithful didn't you understand? Luke, What? What are you going to say? It's just sex? It doesn't mean anything? Is it just me you love? What can you say that will make you twist away? Please don't hate me. Take a few days and chill out. I'll never. Never what? Never do that again? How often have you done it with this guy? And with other guys? I can't believe you'd betray me like that, especially knowing how Haley cheated on me. You just don't understand a woman like me. Understand? My rage boiled over. I pulled her face to mine and screamed at the full capacity of my lungs. I understand exactly what you are. I'd call you a pig, but that's an insult to pigs. You fooled me, didn't you? I'm sure you and your boy enjoyed talking about me while he was stealing you from me. I roughly pushed her away because I was afraid of what I might do. I could see the fear in her eyes, and it both pleased and frightened me at the same time. I couldn't look at her face anymore, so I turned my back to her to gather my strength and speak more calmly. I guess I'll never understand a liar or a cheater. You really did deceive me. You betrayed me and everything I thought we had. Damn. I didn't think I could be hurt so badly, but congratulations. You've managed to destroy me. I think I've realized who you are, and I know for a fact that I'll never be able to trust you again. I tried to calm my anger for a few moments as she cried quietly. I want you out of this house tonight. My attorney is preparing the divorce papers right now. The prenup is in effect since you managed to screw it up. You have half an hour to clean up, and we'll talk about how you get the rest of your stuff over text. I started to walk away and she was still sobbing. I didn't really care. Luke, please. I only love you. Please don't. I pulled Zoe against me, looking down at the floor. Love? I don't love you anymore. I look at you and all I see is ugliness and absolutely none of what I need. And don't you dare say you love me. Love doesn't do what you did to me. You only love yourself. Now get out of here before I get back, and tell your boyfriend to run. Fast and far away. Back to the bar. Linda hesitantly voiced her opinion. Your reaction was stronger than I would have guessed. Despite having just met you, I got the impression you were a kinder and gentler person. Luke is both kind and gentle, Kaylee added, but betrayal can bring out the beast in all of us. Yes, I admit I'm probably a little out of my depth. But Linda, you were clearly on the cheater's side, so maybe you can understand me. With Harper, I knew we were never right for each other. I believed with all my heart that Zoe was the one, and she ripped my heart out. I said those things to vent, and maybe to hurt her as much as possible without resorting to physical violence. But what I said was true. Maybe she'll learn a lesson from it. Or maybe she won't. How did it go after that? Were you able to calm down at least a little, or did you part amicably? I calmed down, and eventually we talked. If she had just made a mistake, I think I would have tried to save our marriage. I'm not perfect, so I would have hoped for forgiveness if the situation had changed. But this was an affair that had been going on since Zoe and I were married, and she couldn't even commit to ending it. So we broke up, but not on the most amicable of terms. Surprisingly, Zoe was malleable and accepted the divorce as it was presented to her. She moved her business to New York, and I haven't seen or heard from her since. And what happened to her lover? You said he was beaten. Did it come back on you? He had a lot of bruises and was in pain for a while, but he recovered. What upset him most was the scar above his eye that threatened his modeling career, but even that has passed. Ironically, Zoe became my alibi, as the attack happened 45 miles from home, at the very time I confronted Zoe in our dining room. I'll admit, my first reaction was a feeling that justice had been served, but it quickly faded away. Sure, he was scum, but I didn't mean it or provoke it. So that's two. Looks like you picked the same women and expected different results. I smiled sadly. You sound like my friends. They all tried to tell me the same thing, but I guess I'm a slow learner since I went down the same path after Zoe. Are you kidding? No. I wish I was. As sad as it is, I think you'll get a kick out of how I found out about Samantha's cheating. Samantha. My divorce was finalized in October 2016. I decided to fly to Dallas to visit Aubrey and Dennis to celebrate Thanksgiving with them. As usual, air travel was difficult that week, and I sat in the SeaTac airport for several hours due to delays. I was concentrating on my beer in the lounge when a charming blonde woman who was having a tense conversation with someone on the phone lowered herself into the seat across from me. Listen, I can't control what the hell the airlines do. I can't go to the gate and demand that we take off because you demand that I arrive on time. The plane is delayed. I'll be there later than expected. She had the cutest dimples that danced as she spoke, and I couldn't help but giggle to myself. She disconnected the call without waiting for an answer on the other end and muttered a few phrases to herself. Then, with a glance at me, she realized that I couldn't help but hear her talking and decided that I was laughing at her. Are you laughing at me, asshole? Oh God, no. I'm sorry it came across that way. I didn't mean to hear you. Then what are you laughing at? I squirmed and decided it was better to be honest. I hope this doesn't piss you off, but, well, I've noticed that you have amazing, beautiful dimples that dance across your face when you're arguing with someone. Thankfully, she laughed and blushed, trying to hide her dimples. Sorry. My mom can make me cranky when she's like that. She thinks the whole world revolves around her schedule, and it's my fault I show up late. Moms can be like that. Are you okay? Oh, yeah. I love my mom, but I'm having a hard enough time dealing with air travel as it is, and I don't need her attitude at all right now. Your phone's ringing. It's her. Trust me, I'm sparing her feelings by not answering it. I'm not in a good mood, and I can't be responsible for what might come out of my mouth. Can I buy you a drink to help you regroup? A drink from a stranger? She threw a little girl look with a shy grin and dimples on her cheeks. I'm not that kind of girl. Well, I'm Luke. And you are? She giggled, smiled, and whispered with feigned desperation. I'm Samantha, or Sam to my friends. See? Now we're not strangers. What would you like to drink, Sam? We chatted for almost 2 hours before my flight finally boarded. I was mesmerized by her wit and charm. She didn't have the beauty that Harper or Zoe had, but she was still very attractive. Her smile was a little crooked like Drew Barrymore's, and combined with those wonderful dimples, she seemed pretty damn beautiful to me. She had the body of an athlete, which made me feel like a high school sports star who had allowed himself a little extra. I decided I had to fix that. I almost regretted hearing the announcement from the airline. Damn. Sam, they're starting boarding my flight. I've really enjoyed getting to know you. Do you live in Seattle? Yes, I live in Redmond. And I'm almost next door in Kirkland. Can I be so bold as to ask if you're in a relationship? Because I'd love to buy you dinner and get to know you better. My opinion of how cute she was further reinforced when she wrinkled her nose. Wow, you move fast, but you're pretty cute, so... Okay, give me your cell phone. Sure, here. Okay. My info is in your contacts under Sam, and you can call me anytime after I get back next Wednesday. Thanks. I have to say, I never thought I'd be this happy after having to sit and wait for a flight. Me neither. I might even be in a good enough mood to call my mom back. We hugged and I felt like I was in heaven. She pulled away and looked into my eyes. Do you really like my dimples, or was that just a line? Trust me, I really, really like them. Luke? Yes. Please don't turn out to be some kind of weirdo. I don't want to have to knock you. I was glad she was laughing. Don't worry. I'm so normal that I'm more afraid of annoying you than anything else. The flight was beautiful because I felt like I didn't even need an airplane. I was in full lust mode with the hope of love on the horizon. The chemistry seemed more than appropriate. In Dallas, Dennis met me at the airport, and I was surprised at how good he looked. On the way to their house, he gave me the happy news. He was in remission. He is one of the nicest guys on this earth, and I couldn't have been happier or more relieved to hear that he was doing well. Dennis and Aubrey had 3 children, and their home seemed like the place I had always wanted for myself. Love was everywhere. Aubrey cooked an amazing feast, and took the time to scold me for choosing narcissistic women as wives instead of finding a girl with good character. In the back of my mind, I pondered which category I would put Sam in if our relationship worked out. I waited to call Sam until Thursday of that week when we both returned home. I was counting on a quick conversation to plan a date, but I ended up feeling like a teenager when our conversation turned into a 2.5 hour marathon. By the time the conversation was over, my head was hovering in the clouds. I could feel a huge smile on my face and enjoyed the moment. It was then that I realized I wanted her. I couldn't wait to pick her up for our date. I was so excited that I had to fight the urge to leave too soon. Her apartment was only 3 miles from my house, and I expected to spend a lot of time in the coming months driving the route between our homes. Our first date was at one of my favorite places, Matt's Rotisserie and Oyster House restaurant. We had an easy conversation and I couldn't stop looking into her eyes. I was falling much faster than I wanted to, but I was clearly falling. The longer we talked, the more beautiful she seemed. Luke, you have no idea how much I want you to come visit me for a while. Oh, I think I know how much, but I want to take my time. Is that okay with you? Yeah, I guess so. You're still getting over your marriage, so there's no rush. Thanks for being understanding. You're much more understanding than my little brain. Luke, I've been lusting after you since the moment you told me your name at the airport, but let's not rush things. I don't mind. Cold showers helped for a few weeks, but by Christmas we realized we were in love and let the passion flow. I'd never run a marathon, but the closeness with Sam was the most intense workout I'd had since football drills at Purdue. A few months later, Sam moved into my house just in time for Valentine's Day. There was no question that we were in an exclusive relationship, and we were rapidly gaining momentum. That summer, we planned a small wedding. Sam played volleyball and led an active lifestyle playing a variety of sports. Hiking, kayaking, biking, and jogging took up all of our weekends when we weren't busy in the Olympic bedroom. She was active at a local gym, and I decided to join in too. We set up a workout challenge, and I bought us both Fitbits and an iPad app that allowed us to track our fitness progress individually and as a couple. I was in the best shape of my life. The wedding was set for the first Saturday in August. We each invited our immediate family and a few friends. Melanie, my personal assistant, was coming with her husband. Aubrey and Dennis would fly in for the wedding. I felt I had done everything right this time and couldn't wait for Sam to be Mrs. Riley. The wedding was informal, with only 37 invited guests, so Sam didn't have the stress that turns many women into brides. Sam's sister was a bridesmaid and didn't have to worry about other attendants. Our priest performed the ceremony right in the reception hall, which avoided transportation issues and wasted time. I stood next to the priest and watched the bride walk towards me. Before the procession began, I looked around at the guests. Melanie was standing a few rows behind me and glowing with happiness. But I didn't see Aubrey or Dennis. I hoped they didn't have a problem with the flight. We said yes, kissed, and started the party. The longer the reception went on, the more worried I became that I didn't see Aubrey and Dennis. About 2 hours into the reception, I felt my phone buzz with an incoming message. Luke, I'm sorry we missed your special day. I didn't want you to worry or ruin your holiday, but Dennis has been diagnosed with cancer again. He went into the hospital yesterday. Don't worry about it. We're fine, but I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. Call me when you get back from your honeymoon. I told Sam about it, and she agreed that I needed to call Aubrey right away. I did, and she tried to reassure me that everything would be okay, but we knew each other too well. Dennis was in trouble, and she didn't hide well how scared she was. Sam and I honeymooned in Hawaii, and I tried my best not to dwell on the difficulties Dennis and Aubrey were facing alone. All in all, it was a great trip, and I was comforted by Sam's understanding and attention to my emotional needs, in addition to her considerable skill in satisfying my physical desires. A few weeks later, in mid-September, Sam and I flew to Dallas for a long weekend to visit Dennis and Aubrey. I walked into their home, and their son and two daughters nearly jumped at me with hugs, greeting their Uncle Luke. But what really knocked the spirit out of me was the sight of Dennis. The big, strong center from my high school football team had become thin and frail. His complexion was gray, and he looked like death was looming over him. I tried not to look shocked and tried my best to treat my friend the same way I always had. After dinner, Sam helped Aubrey with the dishes, and Dennis took me aside to his den. Luke, you probably guessed I wasn't going to make it. Come on, Dennis. You're a fighter. Life is a fight we all lose in the end, my friend. I've made my peace with that. I'm more worried about Aubrey and the kids. They'll be fine financially. I've taken care of that. But promise me you'll take care of them, okay? I think they'll stay here in Dallas, but the kids will need to hang out with their godfather, Uncle Luke, and Aubrey will need to hang out with her best friend. You didn't have to ask, but I promise. You know I love you, don't you? I know. The feeling is mutual. You're a good man, Luke, and a good friend. I couldn't stop my lips from trembling. I thought guys weren't supposed to cry. Dennis struggled to say it, clearly clutching his throat. Real guys cry, buddy. Could silence be both warm and sad at the same time? It was like that for a few moments until Dennis changed the subject. By the way, Sam looks terrific. I hope you two live a long and happy life together. 2 weeks later, Dennis was gone. The funeral and burial were held in Washington, D.C., where their families lived. Aubrey and the children stayed with us for several weeks while we tried to help them through this difficult process. Once again, Sam was wonderful and a true partner in a time of need. It was several months before Sam approached me with an idea. Do you know Hugh, the owner of the gym? He's looking to retire and wondered if we might be interested in buying the place. Really? And what do you want to do? My career at Microsoft is good, but this is more like my dream. It's something I'd love to do. Well, I really don't want to change careers. I'm too well settled and capitalized on the market. Why don't you go into it on your own? By yourself? I suppose I could, but I don't have that kind of money. Maybe I can help. What is Hugh looking for? I have enough money to pay for the business, but he also wants to sell me the building. That's $2 million I don't have and am unlikely to raise. We started an LLC for the purpose of investing in real estate because my portfolio had grown significantly, which meant I had plenty of freedom for other investments. Our accountant and lawyer drew up the agreements, and our new businesses started up smoothly. The night the paperwork was finalized, I was showered with kisses, and we celebrated wildly all weekend. Microsoft asked Sam to stay on as a consultant at a solid hourly rate. We discussed the pros and cons, but both of us realized that the extra income would make her financial situation very easy. It didn't take long to realize that the new business would be a tremendous success. Owning the business and working for Microsoft, which included occasional travel, put a great strain on Sam. She had plenty of energy, but I had to work out at the gym if she needed to go out of town. Nevertheless, we were happy and even started making plans to start a family. Sam thought it would work out if she eventually gave up her job at Microsoft. Right after our first anniversary, Sam had to travel to Atlanta for 3 days to support software development. As usual, we talked every night and shared details of our days. On the second evening of the trip, she called just after 3 p.m. West Coast time, or 6 p.m. Atlanta time. Hey, Sam, how was your day? Wonderful. We got a lot done, but there's still a lot to do. I can't talk long as some of the team members are getting ready to continue their work over dinner. Can I do that tomorrow? Of course. I'll be heading to the gym tonight to check on things, so I can go and see how the staff is holding up. Sounds good. Love you, babe. Love you too. I headed to the gym and decided to work out before I went to check on things in the office. Satisfied that everything was going well, I stayed to close the door at 9. I was tempted to call Sam, but it was past midnight in her time zone, and I was sure she'd had a long day. I showered and decided to pass the time by playing a game on my iPad. The Fitbit app caught my eye, and I decided to see what my progress looked like. I opened the app and felt the blood rush from my body. My gut twisted in pain as I saw the evidence that my life was falling apart. Sam worked out. Her Fitbit was active. Why would she be exercising at almost 1 o'clock in the morning her time? The more I watched, the more I recognized the pattern and immediately realized what she was doing. I had to call her. On the first try, her phone rang until it went to voicemail. She had a distinctive ringtone for me, so she had to know who was calling. I tried several times, but the call still went to voicemail. Finally, on the fifth try, Sam answered. Babe, is everything okay? No, I'm not okay. Are you hurt? In the hospital or something? Wounded? Yes, I've been hurt pretty badly. Oh no. What happened? What's his name? Whose name? What are you talking about? The guy you're having fun with. What's his name? What are you talking about? I don't. Tell me, Sam, why? Luke, how, are you here? Are you going to answer my question? Oh, shit. How do you know? Next time you're having fun with someone other than your husband, take off your damn Fitbit. I disconnected the call, turned off my phone, and threw it across the room. Sleep was not an option. I went for a walk to try and cool down, but instead I walked for miles, crying my eyes out. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not this. How could I keep dating wives who couldn't stay faithful? I came home with a plan to fulfill. We kept our household separate, but we had a few joint accounts and credit cards for household expenses. I went to the computer and transferred all the money into one of my accounts and closed what money I could online. Late that night, I sent an email to my law firm asking to schedule an appointment with a divorce attorney as soon as possible. The next day, I took time off from work to get my affairs in order. I had my divorce papers and prenuptial agreement ready to go. I met with my accountant and attorney to begin the process of paying back Sam's gym loan, since there was a clause in the loan documents that allowed me to claim the full amount of the loan with 60 days' notice. How could I have been such an idiot? How had she managed to fool me? All my insides ached, and I wanted her to experience that pain and more. The vengeful fool in me wanted to ruin her. I hadn't spoken to Sam since that incident, so I didn't know what her plans were for coming home. It didn't help that the dropped phone had ruined the little suction cup, and I had to buy a new one. I immediately blocked Sam's number. I needed a friend, so I called Aubrey. She calmed me down and begged me to be less vindictive. She was my conscience when I didn't want her to be, but I promised her I would try. I thought about stopping by the pub, but if Sam kept to her original travel schedule, she'd be back soon. I wanted to get this confrontation over with as soon as possible and hoped I'd get home before she did. But I was out of luck. I walked in on a sobbing Sam. She ran up and tried to hug me, but I pushed her away. Don't touch me, Sam. Oh, please, oh God, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. Don't leave me, please. I don't want to lose you. Lose me? No, you left us. Luke, please, I was stupid. I thought. Thought? Thought what? That you'd get away with it? Or that I wouldn't mind? Or did your brain tell you that it didn't matter if you broke our vows? Or that you could deal with the consequences? Or that you could disrespect me when you slept with me, and it wouldn't make a difference? What about the thought that the risk of killing my love for you and tearing my heart out is worth the risk? You didn't think. Or maybe you thought there was a better lover for you. Is that so? No, no. Then what foolish thought came into your head? Come, give me your excuse. It wasn't an excuse, all right? It was just stupid recreational. Recreational? You've got to be kidding me. How often do you engage in recreational fun, huh? Do you have fun with the guys at the gym? Taking trains in the women's restroom? I can't understand how you could even come up with a reason like that. I just thought. Again, you're trying to tell me you've thought it through. If you can't do without it for 2 or 3 days, then you're not in control of yourself. Please, Luke, help us forget about this. Let me summarize, darling. You allowed another man, who you still haven't named, to have an intimate relationship with you that belongs to you and me alone. And don't give me that it's your body that you can do whatever you want with. It's yours and mine. Renounce all others until death do us part. Remember? Well, there was death. Our marriage died as soon as he got you into bed. She moaned. I wanted to savor her pain, but it was killing me too. Pull yourself together. Shut up and listen. You're going to be served with divorce papers in the next few days. No, no, please, not the divorce. Help me do this. Listen, damn it. The terms of the prenuptial agreement related to cheating are in effect. You won't get much. I'm also applying for a loan. The principal amount is just over $350,000. You'll have 60 days to pay it off or you'll lose the gym. No, Luke, you'll bankrupt me. I said shut up and listen. I won't claim the loan if you sign the divorce. You resist, then I'll take everything. I don't care about the money or the gym. I just want you. Please, let's work this out. No, Sam. You knew about my painful history with cheating wives. You swore you wouldn't do that to me, and yet a year later you did exactly that. I'll never trust you again, especially when you show so little respect for me, knowing what it would do to me. Damn it, Luke. I made a big mistake. I'm not perfect, but neither are you. Are you telling me you never wanted to date another woman? I fought my composure to stay calm. I bit my lips so hard I could taste blood. Yeah, I'm not perfect. We all have fantasies. The difference is that you acted on them. I would never do that. Please. Stop begging. It makes me sick. But we were planning a family. What? Do you really think I want my children to have a mother who thinks the way you obviously think? I want to have good, decent, moral, loving children who will make this world a better place. I don't want their lives to be affected by a man who can do what you did. She started wailing again, and I really didn't want to listen to her. I left and told her I would be back in a day or two when we had both calmed down. It was hard to leave the shattered woman I loved sobbing uncontrollably on the floor. At first, I hoped she felt as destroyed as I did, but I felt horrible guilt for leaving her. Besides, I needed to get out of there before I broke down. I didn't want her to see that. After a few days, I cooled down. We talked, and I agreed to go to counseling to see if we could save the relationship. I didn't want to be a 3-time loser, and I really cared about her. I just didn't know if I could ever get that feeling of her being my life partner back. After 6 weeks of meetings with the counselor, we were driving home from the last session, and Sam was uncharacteristically quiet. I glanced at her a few times and saw tears rolling quietly down her cheeks. Like a lot of guys, I'm not particularly observant, but I knew this night was going to change everything. We walked silently through the front door, and Sam broke the silence. Can we sit down and talk? I have a story to tell you. Sure, babe. I assumed she had decided to sit next to me on the couch to avoid eye contact. Sam sighed heavily and, struggling for composure, began her story. When I was little, my dad and I were very close. I was his princess, and he was my hero, like a father should be. My sister and I would always snuggle up to him on the couch when we were watching a movie or just relaxing as a family after dinner. Even during my rebellious teenage years, my dad and I were close. When I was 16, I made a purity vow to him at our church that I would save myself from marriage. I didn't make that promise lightly. I took every word seriously. Our church held events like that when I was a kid. Yes, it was the order of the day then. Anyway, I started dating a guy from my Sunday school class. We dated for about a year, and he kept pushing me toward intimacy. On my 18th birthday, I gave in, and Pandora's box was opened. I know what you're like. Yeah. Anyway, one night the rest of the family had to leave for a banquet, and my boyfriend and I were left home alone. After about 15 minutes, we were already doing it. I looked up and saw my dad in the doorway looking at us. He was diabetic and had forgotten his insulin, so he had to go back to get it. His mouth was trembling like he was going to say something, but instead he just walked away. I covered my eyes to chase after him, even though I had no idea what I was going to say. Before he walked out the front door, he turned to me. There were tears in his eyes, and I felt like I'd been struck by lightning. I couldn't move. Then he calmly said, "You're a grown woman, and you can make your own choices," and walked away. He took it pretty calmly. No, not really. I hurt him terribly. But the thing that broke my heart the worst was the look in his eyes that night and every day afterward until he died. Before that, whenever he looked at me, there was a love in his gaze that was impossible to miss. I could swear his eyes twinkled. But since that night, that look had disappeared. When he looked at me, it seemed to me that all he was seeing was a sight no father should see. Tears and pain streamed down Sam's face as she remembered her past. A chill ran down my spine as I realized why she had forced herself to tell me about this horrible milestone from her past. I wanted to speak up, but decided to let her finish. We never hugged again after that. Sure, we hugged when we said hello or parted ways, but the intimacy of daddy and princess was no longer there. We loved each other, but now we were father and daughter. She paused to gather her thoughts, and I hugged her, partly to comfort her, but mostly to let her know I understood her. Luke, I see the same look my father had when I look into your eyes now. Whenever you look at me, you see me with some faceless guy and relive my betrayal. I feel like you desperately want it to go away, so we can go back to the way things were before I screwed things up. But there's nothing you can do about it. I'm sorry. I'm not holding on to this to punish you or anything. I still love you. I know you do, but that look will always be there. You can't trust me no matter how much you want to. No matter what I do to make you believe that I will be faithful and never cheat again, deep down, you will always fear the old saying, once you cheat, you always cheat. There's nothing either of us can do. I've broken what we can't fix so that things can go back to the way they were. What are you saying, so we give up? I'm saying you deserve someone you can trust with all your heart, and I deserve to find someone who will look at me the way you used to before my stupidity. I'm saying we both need to move on separately. Back to the bar. Linda's emotions were at breaking point. Tears were streaming down her cheeks in a silent cry. I had a few of my own, just from reliving the nightmare. Leaving Sam at the house, I walked over to the pub. I walked in, and Kaylee realized everything just by looking at me. Kaylee wiped away tears as she recounted that evening. I noticed Luke walk in and I could see he was about to snap. I yelled to Pete to keep an eye on the bar and took Luke into the study. As soon as the door closed, he collapsed into my arms and burst into tears. Linda lowered her gaze to her beer. I know the feeling. I know that pain. Kaylee comforted me and talked to me for hours. Eventually, she made me laugh a little, and then she came up with a nickname for me. The Three Wind Tricks? Yes, Kaylee said. I told him that he'd get over it, and eventually he could just let go of the pain and let the wind carry it away, like he'd done 2 times before. He swore he would never be in that position again. I knew him too well to believe he would live alone, but I figured he needed time. Linda put her hand on mine with a slight smile on her face. But you look okay now. In fact, you look more than fine. You give me hope. I just moved here for a fresh start, and fate seems to have brought us together, I think, so you can share your story with me. You look happy now. I finally realized that I was making the same mistake over and over again. It all started back in high school when I decided that image and confidence were more important than shared values and respect. I had the perfect woman, and I lost sight of her, never stopping to look for the wrong one. You were thinking about Aubrey. I closed my eyes and smiled. Oh yeah. It took a few months before I was ready to break up with Sam, but I knew the woman I needed and wanted was the one who had always been my best friend. So you went to Dallas and knocked her down? Kaylee grinned and slapped the bar lightly. You'd think he'd done something so simple, but no. Genius Luke managed to screw that up too. Thanks, Kaylee's mom. Linda's face lowered as if she were watching a tragedy unfold. You didn't go after Aubrey? Of course I went. but I followed her around because I didn't know if she was ready to go through Dennis's death on her own. We kept in touch, and I tried to figure out when the right moment would be to confess my love to her. Kaylee was my rock. I was ready to tell Kaylee that I had tickets to fly to Aubrey. Of course, I planned to knock her down when I got there. So what happened? 4 weeks ago, I woke up after a sleepless night. Actually, you probably can't wake up if you've never slept, but I woke up with a new sense of purpose. All night I tossed and turned until somewhere around 3 in the morning I made a decision. I was driving to Dallas to tell Aubrey how I felt. If everything went according to plan, I would come home engaged to the woman I had wanted for as long as I could remember. After making this decision, I couldn't sleep because I had to fight my fears and the excitement encompassing me. I was confused, but determined to find out if she felt the same way I did. It was Friday morning and I had some errands to run, so I went to the office and feverishly did what absolutely had to be done and managed to buy a plane ticket for the next day to get my ass to Dallas. The tasks took longer than I had bargained for, but by 4 o'clock in the afternoon I managed to finish my work, and I made it to the pub to tell Kaylee my plans. 3 cheats, Luke. You're early tonight. I know, and I won't be able to stay long, but I had to tell you that I finally decided to go to Aubrey's. I have to tell her. Well, you didn't. Look, I have to run and get ready. I want to stop by the jewelry store, so I'll be sure to show up with a ring in my hand. Luke, listen. Kaylee, thanks for your help. I couldn't. Luke, shut up and listen. I need to deliver these drinks, but if you shut up for a minute and turn around, I think you'll realize you don't need to go to Dallas. What? What do you mean? Look in the stall by the restrooms. I'll be right back. I turned, and my heart jumped in my chest, but just as quickly fell into the abyss. I saw enough of her profile to recognize Aubrey. She was sitting with some guy, holding his arm across the table. They were smiling at each other, like two people who had shared a common love. The pain in my stomach slammed into me head on. I quickly left the bar before I made a fool of myself and threw up in the bushes near the front door of the bar. I was in shock. My head was a complete mess, and I couldn't connect two simple thoughts. I turned my phone off and drove around town feeling sorry for myself. I just kept driving, thoughts running off on tangents until tears stopped me from seeing. I realized I had driven all over West Seattle and drove to Alki Beach to stop for a while. My eyes were burning when I finally found a parking spot. I parked and just sat there crying like a baby. Finally pulling myself together, I walked out onto the sidewalk along the beach and just sat there watching the sun set over the water. All sorts of thoughts came into my head, but I couldn't concentrate and felt completely lost. It was about midnight before I was able to drive home. I showered, got dressed, and drove to the office around 1 a.m., hoping to occupy my mind with something else. Besides the fact that it was the middle of the night, it was Saturday, and I knew I would be alone during the day, which was exactly what I wanted at that moment. Other than canceling my flight, I didn't accomplish anything. I slept for a few hours on the couch in my office, and then I just sat in my desk chair and stared out the window looking for answers that seemed unattainable. Should I let her go? Should I fight for her? There was no way I could decide which path was right and which was wrong. Finally, around 2 in the afternoon, I went to the pub to see Kaylee. I realized I had left the night before without talking to her after she warned me that Aubrey would be there with a date, so she was probably worried. I walked in, and Kaylee saw me right away, but the look on her face was not at all what I expected to see. I expected her to be worried about me, but she was clearly furious. You damned fool! What the hell were you thinking running out of here like that? She set the beer down in front of me, and without letting me get a word in edgewise, decided to start tearing my ass up. You asshole! You made me worry, you idiot. I have to finish serving the drinks, but you're staying in this damn seat until I get back. The words she used were changed to protect the innocent. Kaylee never swore, much less at me, so I figured it was best to keep quiet. What was she getting so worked up about? She kept frowning and shaking her head, muttering horrible names at me. She texted someone, then went on to other clients, keeping her angry gaze on me. It took Kaylee about 10 minutes to finish what she needed to do when she finally stood in front of me, eyes glaring like a demon trying to pierce my soul. She was clearly trying to temper her fervor before she spoke. I froze speechless with fear. What a bloody idiot! I thought you were going to Aubrey's table, but like a complete fool, you ran out the door. What the hell got into you? What was your simple mind thinking? I I couldn't. Shut up. You spent months, no years, telling me how Aubrey was the woman you loved and then ran away without talking to her? But you warned me. You showed me where they were. Warned you? About what? Damn it, Kaylee. You know I love her more than life. I told you I was going to Dallas to finally tell her how I felt and ask her to marry me. In my mind, I had already dedicated my life to Aubrey, the woman I loved with all my heart. I had loved her since childhood and was willing to do anything to make her mine. When you warned me by showing me where she was sitting with her boyfriend, I realized that Aubrey probably had other plans with this guy. Kaylee's face visibly softened, but then I noticed she wasn't looking at me, just over my shoulder. Then I felt a gentle hand on my back and heard the voice of an angel. Is this how you really feel about me, Luke? I've waited almost 20 years to hear you say those words. I spun around on the bar stool and Aubrey pulled me to her. Our lips met, and our tongues danced with a fury and passion like I had never experienced. I felt our hearts and minds merge into a single life bound by love. Our spirits soared into a new dimension, as if we could leave our bodies and look down on a heavenly connection. After 3 marriages and many other relationships, it only took one real kiss for me to realize what my father had been trying to tell me all these years. In my mind, it was confirmed without a doubt. Aubrey was the one. She was the true love I had always wanted and needed. At the bar. Linda couldn't hide the tears that came to her eyes. You almost missed out on the woman of your dreams again? Kaylee raised an eyebrow and looked at me. Yes, I did. When he'd recovered enough from their rather erotic display of affection, I asked him what he was thinking to pull a stunt like that. I told you. She was sitting with another guy. Kaylee looked ready to scold me again, but I noticed the glint in her eyes. Then I told him he was a damn fool for making assumptions without checking them out. A smile spread across my face as I felt her hands on my shoulders before she spoke. Kaylee, are you being mean to Luke again? I turned to see my love and pulled her lips to mine. After a few seconds, Kaylee giggled and cleared her throat. Why don't you two get a room? That PDA is embarrassing all the customers. Aubrey smiled back at her. We'll make great use of the room in a few days, won't we, honey? Linda smiled, her moist cheeks glistening. You two are wonderful together. Oh, I'm sorry. Linda, I want you to meet my fiancé, C.E. Hi, Linda. Luke's manners are a little off. I'm Aubrey. Happy tears flowed from Linda's eyes. Aubrey, it's so nice to meet you. Luke has been admiring you all evening. I have to say, if he had ended up with anyone but you, it would have been the worst story I've ever heard. It's so great when high school sweethearts end up together. Luke, were you talking about me? You're the only topic I think is important enough to talk about. She kissed me gently again. Oh, you're so sweet. She raised her eyebrows and shifted her gaze to Linda. I wouldn't say we were lovers. We were best friends, that's for sure. I had to clarify. I think we both wanted to be lovers, but struggled to find a way to transition from close friend status. Aubrey grinned and said, Actually, Luke was a horny teenager, and I was too serious to be the object of his erotic experimentation. Okay, she's right. Sometimes I wonder how things would have turned out if I had grown up a lot sooner. I always loved her and ended up settling for 3 women who had her outer beauty, but were empty inside and could never compare to her for what she was and still is. Well, Aubrey, Luke was certainly right when he talked about how beautiful you are. Oh, you're too kind. The important thing is that when I look into his eyes, I see his heart intertwined with mine. I know he loves me unconditionally, and I feel like the luckiest woman on earth. Linda grabbed Aubrey's hand and scanned us both with a concerned look. Wait a minute, what happened to the other guy? Aubrey looked at her with an understanding smile. There was no other guy. It was my cousin, Paul. I stayed with him and his wife for a few weeks while I looked for a house in the neighborhood. I was already planning on moving back and hoping Luke would finally come to his senses and ask me to marry him. Linda grinned and wiped a few tears from her eyes. You two are beautiful together. Damn, and here I was hoping I had a chance to get Luke, she laughed. But I see it's a lost cause. I moved here from California for a fresh start, and I was hoping to make new friends, and maybe a real soulmate. Hopefully there are a few more like Luke among my peers. And then Kaylee reached across the bar and took my shoulder and Linda's with her other hand. Linda, you've made 3 new friends, Aubrey added. Yeah, and actually, you should come to the wedding on Saturday, especially since you're new here. Oh, that's nice, but I can't get involved. Come on, girl. Coming to the wedding celebration of 2 of your 3 friends in Seattle is not an intrusion. We'll take offense if you don't. Besides, almost everyone there will be from the neighborhood, and I'm sure you'll make dozens of new friends. Okay, you talked me into it. Luke, honey, text her the details. You really are the sweetest couple. Isn't it a shame you both had to go through such a hard time to get here? I can't speak for Luke, but I think he needed that experience to get himself in shape. As for me, I wouldn't trade anything for the time I spent with Dennis and the joy our 3 children gave me. I loved that man with everything I had. So if we wanted to start with Luke differently, it didn't matter, and in the end, it probably wouldn't have worked out. I think the timing was right, and God knows what he is doing. My love for Luke has never left me, and it is just as strong as my love for Dennis. I'm just lucky to have 2 wonderful men who have filled my life with love. That's so sweet. It's a real miracle that you 2 finally ended up together. It wasn't a miracle. It was a conspiracy, I said, as Aubrey rubbed my head and laughed. Kaylee and Aubrey set it all up behind my back. That's partly true, Kaylee added. When Luke and Sam broke up, I called Aubrey. Luke had already told her, but I told her that's not why I was calling. I asked her when they were both going to wake up and meet up. Aubrey chuckled, getting to the story. By then, Dennis had been gone for 11 months and I wasn't ready for a new relationship. I have to admit that a relationship with Luke was nothing new to me. But I wasn't ready, and I didn't think Luke would be ready either, since his last breakup was so fresh. Luke and I still talked at least once a week, and I could hear the anger and resentment in his voice. So I told Kaylee to get on with the healing process, since I knew Luke was here